Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to be talking with you a little bit about supporting your student through the COVID-19 pandemic, and then some of the things that we kind of think might be some considerations for the future as well. So overview, I'm just going to be talking about the impact that this crisis has had on college counseling. And then I'm going to go into some of the causes and experiences of anxiety and depression, how the crisis may contribute to that anxiety and depression, approaches to managing that anxiety and depression, and then some of the KSU initiatives and resources for your students. I wanted to start out by giving you guys a little bit about what we have seen at the Counseling Center here at KSU. There hasn't actually been a lot of significant change that just all the research has been showing. And from our numbers that we've seen at our Counseling Center, there hasn't been a lot of change in the number of students being seen, and not really in the presenting concerns as well. Our typical things that we see at the Counseling Center are pretty much anxiety and depression. That's always been the highest numbers over the years. But in addition to that, students are reporting a little bit more specifically loss of motivation, academic distress, and then loneliness and isolation as well because of the pandemic. Another thing that we have noticed is that there are fewer new students seeking services. So we're not having as many people come in for their initial consultation and starting the counseling services. We're seeing a lot of students that we were seeing prior to the pandemic. But the students who are coming in for counseling, the existing students, and then the ones who are the few that are coming in for services that are newer, they have actually been able to receive a higher dose of treatment. So we've been able to see them for a longer period of time and more frequently, just because we haven't been getting as many of the new students in. And then another thing that we have noticed at our counseling center is we host a lot of workshops that are just little 1-hour programs that can help students. And we're seeing a lot of students who are not clients at the counseling center coming to those workshops, as opposed to the students that are coming in for counseling. So then, so I don't know how to move these the video out of my way. So then there's the Center for Collegiate Mental Health. They are like the national center for just college counseling. They have conducted a survey of college students starting after March of 2020, and they surveyed about 47,797 students. 1/3 of those students sought mental health services due to the COVID-19 pandemic, whereas 2/3 did not and sought counseling for other reasons aside from the pandemic. The majority of those students who were seeking mental health care reported that COVID-19 has negatively impacted at least one aspect of their life, and that was about 85% of the students. They did at least report that the pandemic has negatively impacted them. And then out of that 85%, 65% of them reported that their mental health was affected. 61% reported that their motivation or focus had been affected. 60% noted that their loneliness and isolation had been affected. And then academics were 59%. And then 54% was missed experiences and opportunities. So just feeling like they came to college and didn't get that experience that they were hoping for. And then again, it's just worth noting that 35% of students that were seeking mental health services reported that COVID-19 did not negatively impact their mental health. So I just thought that was an interesting fact to throw in there. I forgot to say at the beginning, please feel free to ask questions as I'm going. I don't mind the interruption if you need any clarification or have a specific question. So I wanted to start out by just telling you guys a little bit about what you might see in your students when it comes to anxiety and depression, since even with the pandemic, we're still seeing the same symptoms. We're not really seeing anything different. And I always think it's really important for students and parents to know what anxiety and depression look like, and maybe what they might be experiencing because of this, and maybe what you're experiencing because of this too. So with anxiety, it is a natural response to danger or demand. So good stress motivates us. That's what gets us, setting goals, moving forward, that little bit of anxiety that kind of pushes us to do better. And then bad stress is what inhibits us. So that would be, the stress that keeps you from doing a lot of things because you're too nervous or scared to ask a question or something like that. So that keeps you from moving forward and makes you avoid the problem. So anxiety can be experienced physically, which would be things like heart racing, chest tightness, difficulty breathing, shaking, emotionally with just the nervousness, worry. Mentally would be things such as racing thoughts, so kind of just like that scattered thinking. And sometimes people with anxiety, their minds literally go blank because they're so overwhelmed. And then behaviors, so things like avoidance, avoiding the problem, not wanting to face it because you're nervous. And then one thing that is really important that I always talk to students about is that there are certain types of thinking that contribute to anxiety. Like those racing thoughts that I was talking about, we kind of put those into categories to help students understand what they're experiencing. So catastrophizing is expecting the worst, just always thinking the worst thing is going to happen. Mind reading, assuming you know what other people are thinking about you, and then that usually contributes to social anxiety. So thinking that everyone's watching you or that people think you look funny today, something like that. Shoulds, so saying I should be doing this, I should be doing that, setting high expectations for yourself. Black and white thinking is kind of that all or nothing. It has to be one way or the other way. There's no gray area. There's no in between. Then there are several other types. There's, I think, about like 10 different categories that we talk about with types of thinking. And then some things you might experience with depression or that your students might be experiencing with depression. They can be pretty sneaky. It's not always just that feeling sad, crying all the time. It's not always in your face. Depression usually comes a lot with negative thinking, negative core beliefs about yourself and others. Um, a lot of times you can see it by if someone's not interacting with friends as much, if they're laying in bed a lot, sleeping in a lot later than they normally would, not eating. So it's not necessarily just being sad and crying and being mopey. A lot of times it's kind of not doing the things that you would normally expect of your student. So if they're not doing well academically, or if they are laying in bed a lot and not really turning the lights on, not showering, those kinds of things is normally what you would notice with depression. But along with depression is a lot of the negative beliefs. So if you are noticing this in your student, there's probably a lot of negative thinking that's going along with it. Things like I'm worthless, nobody loves me, I'm broken. And they're just things that you kind of logically know aren't true, but the depression just really makes you feel that those things are true and they're not going to change. And then those negative beliefs then produce negative feelings like shame, being a burden, feeling overwhelmed. And then along with depression, like I said, you'll see the loss of motivation, loss of interest in activities, social isolation, difficulty with sleep and appetite, not a lot of physical activity just because they don't have a lot of energy, and then the lack of school life integration. So they try to just keep school separate and keep everything kind of separate in their lives, and they don't really interact and try to focus on all the different aspects of their life. So with this pandemic, there's been a lot of stress with the distancing and isolation, like I said, that contributes to anxiety. So some of the things that you and your students might be experiencing is, like I said, related to that catastrophic thinking, so like worries about you or a loved one becoming sick. There's been a lot of difficulty with finances, keeping up in school, difficulty meeting basic needs. A lot of people have had, lost their jobs or are having difficulty finding jobs, and that doesn't seem like it's changing anytime soon. So of course that impacts finances and trying to pay for school and make sure you can stay in school and work a part-time job and pay rent. That's one of the things that I've noticed a lot of students have been struggling with this semester. And then just being afraid of leaving their dorms or leaving their apartments to go to work because of all of the stress with becoming sick or worried about getting someone else sick. And then difficulty meeting basic needs. That is something that I've seen a lot too, just that decrease in socialization, not getting to see friends as often because everyone's trying to be safe, or, with the quarantine for 14 days, sometimes that's a long time to go without talking to your friends if you're a social person. A lot of students have also had to kind of move back home, which can sometimes be stressful for some students. If you haven't always gotten along with your parents, that can sometimes cause more stress with school. And then dealing with everything on campus shifting too, that's been a big thing. Classes went online for a while and then some of them were in person. There's always just that unknown of whether or not, there's the hope that classes are going to go back in person so you can interact with students more and interact with professors, but we don't always know exactly what's going to happen. And so that's been a lot of stress for students. Like I said, other factors that may increase their anxiety, adjusting to moving back home. So a lot of students finally got to live in the dorms for the first time and then had to move back home early on in the pandemic. Or now, they had to stay home for an extra year and they're going to be moving out for the first time and kind of thought that was going to happen a year ago. And so I had to kind of delay that. And now that anxiety is kind of starting up again of getting their own apartment or moving into the dorms. Overexposure to COVID related news. I think that's still an issue. It definitely was early on in the pandemic, but there's still a lot of news out there about the pandemic. And the more you read about it, the more stressed you're going to feel. Inability to leave the house. So there are still restrictions. I mean, some people are still following those guidelines of staying home, not going out as often. And that has been really stressful for some students, not having that campus life that they kind of hoped for. And then having too much time to overthink. I would say that's probably the most I've seen students talk about in the past year with this pandemic. Everyone keeps telling me that I've just had too much time to sit alone and think about my problems. So I figured I'd come to counseling now, or I never really had time to focus on my anxiety or depression. And now that we've been in this pandemic, I haven't been able to do anything else. So I might as well come to counseling. And then this crisis may cause increased feelings of fear and anxiety in some, while some may also respond by denying the situation to avoid anxiety. So I think that's been a big separation, is that some students and their families are noticing that increased fear and anxiety while seeing others who are just denying it and saying it's not a problem. And overall, I think the goal in managing your anxiety is just finding that balance between the two states of mind. So, you can't be anxious all the time about the pandemic. You can't completely just isolate and avoid everything forever and shut yourself off. But you also can't just pretend like this isn't happening, because obviously things have changed with the school, things have changed with our society, and there has to be a middle ground. So I always tell my students to, it's okay to have a healthy amount of fear and anxiety around it, because this is a stressful time. But you do have to kind of forget about it for a little while to focus on your schoolwork, or to go see a friend. If you two have both been really safe during all of this and you finally want to get together, just the two of you, or like a small group. So you can't always be thinking about it, but you can't completely avoid it either. So how this pandemic might be contributing to depression. Let me know if I'm going really fast. There's a lot of slides to get through, so I just want to make sure I'm getting through all of it. So someone please speak up if you need me to restate something or clarify, like I said. So with the depression, we've been talking a lot about physically distancing and social distancing, and we're technically practicing this physical distance, but it's being called, and it's more felt like social distancing and social isolation. And the use of that language is really important for how we interpret what we are experiencing. So feeling that socially distanced, isolated can lead to feeling lonely and depressed. So even though that we've been physically distancing to stay safe from the pandemic, and just because of rules when campus went online and we couldn't really be on campus as often, there weren't things that were open. You still get this feeling that you're isolated and that you don't have anyone to talk to. And I think I've even noticed that with staff, where people are like, don't really feel like they can call their boss and talk with them about a situation, because you just feel like you're doing it all by yourself. And I've definitely noticed that with students when they're in these online classes, they don't even know half of their the students that are in their class. They don't know their names. They don't know who's in their class. They can't get a study group together. They tried to use like GroupMe's and online forums to talk to each other, but people are a lot more scared to talk in those formats for some reason right now. So that's just some of the things that can lead to depression with this pandemic. And then another thing that I talk a lot with students about is the loss that has come from this. And I talk with them about kind of grieving that loss, almost like you've, whether or not you've actually lost someone from the pandemic or not, there's still this grief that comes with it. You've lost your daily routine. You're missing out on activities, plans that you had, trips you were planning on taking. Maybe lost your independence from having to move back home. And so that's just been a lot of stress on students, loss of that college environment. So we definitely talk about grieving that as if you have lost a loved one, because there really is just this overarching, I can't think of the word I'm trying to say right now, but just this feeling of loss that I've noticed a lot of students experiencing. So with that loss of routine that students have had, they may have been falling into unhealthy patterns or behaviors. So not getting up and moving around throughout the day, sitting in one place, looking at a laptop or a screen all day. And as I said before, poor sleep, bad eating habits, loss of motivation to complete their schoolwork. So there's some feedback. I think, can everyone mute their microphones, please? Thank you. I'm sorry. So what can your students do to help cope, and how can you help them to cope through all of this? So reframing those unhelpful thoughts. It's not the events in life that cause our anxiety or depression, but it's our interpretation and thoughts about the events that cause that anxiety and depression. So it may be easy during this time to let unhelpful thoughts take over, but you have the ability to change those thoughts. And some of the things that I talk with students about is asking kind of, where's the evidence that this is true? If you're having some of these negative beliefs about feeling worthless, or I'm never going to get through this, I'm never going to move forward, I'm stuck because of this pandemic. Where's the evidence? What can you 100% say is a fact that is supporting this negative thinking that you're having? How much do I really believe this thought? So sometimes these thoughts just pop into their heads, and they know it's not true, but there's still like only maybe like 5% of them that really believes it. And that's the part that takes over. So if you really think about how much do I really believe this, sometimes you can kind of talk yourself out of it, sort of. What are alternative ways to think about this? So what are some different things I can say to myself, such as, I've been having a hard time with motivation lately, but that doesn't mean I'm never going to graduate. Because a lot of students will kind of, if you're experiencing that anxiety and depression, you'll go from failing one exam to I'm never going to graduate. I'm going to fail all my classes. What's the point? When really they just were stressed out about one test, and there are a lot of other aspects to look at. So they could reframe that thought as more of, okay, I failed this one exam because I didn't have the motivation to study, but maybe I can try a different study habit and work harder the next time. Helping your students practice gratitude, helping them just see the things that they can be thankful for and writing them down. I tell my students a lot, especially during this pandemic, since we don't have a lot of control in what's been happening. We don't have a lot of control in what the school tells us to do, whether or not we can meet in person. We don't have a lot of control over whether or not the pandemic gets worse or it gets better. So one thing you do have control over are focusing on the things that you do have in your life that are good. Now that's definitely not by saying, because I've had some students tell me that, my parents are trying to help me see the positive side of things, but it's almost disregarding like what I'm going through. So it's okay to practice being positive about the things you do have in your life, but not by saying that like, oh, someone else must have it better than me, or must have it worse off. I'm sorry. This probably isn't the worst it could get. There's probably someone who has it worse than me. So I'm not allowed to feel sad about it. I'm not allowed to feel anxious. Because, anxiety is anxiety. You can't really help the intensity of how anxious or depressed you're feeling. So comparing yourself to someone else's problems, or saying that there's probably someone who has it worse than me, doesn't really help you feel any better. It just kind of makes you feel like I'm not allowed to feel these feelings, when I tell all my students that all of their feelings are valid. There's a reason you're feeling this way. So just taking that gratitude and just writing down 3 things that you are thankful for, can help their brain just start to notice the positive things. and I actually forgot to say this part. So I always like to tell my students too that um, so we have this like this the way our brains work because of way back in the times when we actually had to look around for danger and we actually had to stay safe from wild animals and had to scavenge for food, all of that thing. Um, our brains are still wired to see the negative. And so that's where all this anxiety and depression comes from, because our brains are just pre-wired to focus on everything that's bad, because it's part of this like fight or flight response that we have. But instead of an actual real danger, now we just have this like anxiety and these other life stressors that we have to worry about. And so we only see the negative in things. So practicing like a gratitude journal or making a list of 3 things that you have every day that you're happy for in your life can help kind of rewire your brain to start to notice the more positive things in your life. Students never believe me, but I tell them if you practice it every single day, whether you do it when you first wake up or right before you go to bed, the more you practice it, the better it's going to get. And that's kind of what a lot of these coping techniques are, is you have to practice them every day or it's not going to get any easier. Self-care is very important. So, making your own routine, even with, hopefully the school going back in person and students being able to have actual classes, they're still going to need a routine. College life is different from when you were in high school. Your schedule isn't as jam-packed and it's not the same thing every day. You're going to have Monday, Wednesday classes and Tuesday, Thursday classes. And some of your classes might be at 5 o'clock at night. Some might be at 8 o'clock in the morning. So you need a routine, and especially, while the pandemic's still going on and whether or not it gets better or worse, you have to make a routine, but also give yourself compassion if it doesn't, I think it cut off something. Give yourself compassion if you don't completely stick to it all the time. We actually have a handout that we give some of our students that is kind of this like, wake up in the morning, go ahead and get ready, then do something that's relaxing for you, then focus on your schoolwork for a few hours, then maybe take a lunch break, then focus on your schoolwork for another couple of hours, then do something relaxing. So just kind of like break up your day. But every day you might not get to that thing you wanted to do that was relaxing. Maybe you don't have time to take a walk or go exercise, but as long as you're kind of trying to stick to your routine every day and getting most of it done, that's okay. Because right now we're definitely getting overwhelmed with everything. I think everyone's kind of at their wits end with the pandemic, and there's only so much you can do. You can try to make the perfect routine and stick to it every single day, but even at the end of the day, the same coping skills that we had prior to this pandemic aren't working right now. We are able to do some of those things now that the world's kind of opening up a little bit more, but it's still a little overwhelming. So we have to give ourselves a little compassion when things don't go exactly the way we hope it will. Another part of self-care is just focusing on your diet. Are you eating at least 1 full meal a day? Are you adding in some fruits and vegetables? Are you drinking enough water? Are you just snacking all the time? Because we know with this pandemic, a lot of people have just been at home and eating whatever's in the house, and you have more time to sit there and look in your kitchen and see what food you have. And so, maybe setting up a routine for healthier eating habits. And again, giving yourself compassion. If you have a cheat day, if you have a day where you're just snacking too much because you're stressed out, that's okay. Um, and then, like I said before, limit the amount of time that you spend looking at COVID-19 related news. A lot of students, I've talked with them about decreasing their social media use, because especially like last year when a lot of students were going on like summer vacation, and even this year when students were still going on spring break trips, some students were really upset by that because they were trying to follow the rules and do everything to keep their families safe and keep themselves safe. And they go on social media and see that students are at the beach and having a great time, and they feel like they're missing out. And it just kind of contributes to that anxiety and depression. So we talked about limiting social media if you need to for a little while, especially around like holidays and vacation times, because you can kind of put it on mute for like 30 days, things like that. And then not looking at the COVID-19 related news, because in the beginning we were just kind of inundated with news. It was like all over any kind of social media platform, any kind of news platform. Now I don't think you see it as often, or at least I haven't noticed it as often in the news. But there's still little notifications at the top of your Facebook or your Instagram that says, like, if you want COVID-19 updates, you can click here. And so it's still kind of there. So maybe looking at it once a day just to get an update, but not looking at it all day for hours at a time. So just for students wanting to cope, wanting to learn some new coping skills during this time, staying connected with others the best that they can. So even though we've been like social distancing with everyone, hopefully your students have been able to set up like Zoom meetings with friends or like FaceTime chats or something, because that has helped with feeling a little bit connected. And even now, setting up times that they can go see their friends for a couple of hours in a safe environment or outside, especially now that it's warmer. Owl Life is is KSU's website for any activities and organizations that we have going on. So especially I think over the summer and starting in the fall, they're trying to get a lot more activities started. So joining events and organizations on Owl Life can be very helpful. I heard something the other day that I think said that most of the people who are successful in college usually join some sort of organization or go to on-campus events or just have some sort of like social life that connects them to college. Because if you just sit in your room all day and you're just trying to study, go to class, study, go to class, then you're not going to have much of that experience, and that can get pretty depressing, and you can kind of feel really isolated and alone. So just Owl Life is kind of our best bet for finding activities that they can join. Something that is also really helpful is setting up zones for daily activities in your home. So I'm sure some of you are probably working from home while your students have been doing school from home. And that's been really stressful because everyone needs a space, but you also can't be in that same space all the time. So a lot of students have just been spending all of their time in their bedroom because they, if a parent's working from home, they can't go out into like the main living space if that's where the parent's working, or they don't have an office or a classroom to go work in. So they just have to do their work in their bedroom. But then they've also been doing that work, like sitting in their bed. And then they also sit in their bed to watch TV, to eat snacks, and then try to sleep. And that just completely ruins your sleep. So having some kind of zone, like this is the space where I'm going to do my homework and study. This is the space where I'm going to watch TV and relax. The bed is only for sleeping. I don't use it for anything else. And then this is the space where I eat my meals. So like not eating meals at your desk, that can contribute to a lot of stress as well, because you don't get that 5 minutes to just like enjoy a meal, 5 to 10 minutes, however long you take to eat your meals. But you just don't get time to enjoy your meal and take a break from the screen because you're sitting there at your desk eating. So that I think it's helpful as a parent, if your student is still doing a lot of classwork from home, to help them find a space that they can use for school. And maybe if you're still working from home, like you guys work in separate spaces, or even if you can have the same space to work, maybe, but having a different space designated for family time or for just relaxation, for doing other things, that can be really helpful. And of course, now that, campus is a little more open and things are hopefully moving back to normal, I'll just keep saying hopefully, students can go on campus, especially if they're still living at home. There are places on campus to study and do homework. And even if their classes are online, I've been encouraging them to go to the library and do your online class. Sit in a little like room, a study room in the library or a cubicle in the library, and have your class there. And that way, when you go home, you can separate school from relaxing and being at home with your family. So something else that we teach a lot is mindful movement and grounding with the senses. So what can I see, hear, taste, feel, and smell helps bring you back to the present. So anxiety always has you in the future, just thinking about what's to come, all of the stress that you've got coming up. And depression typically has you looking back at mistakes that you've already made, regrets, things that you can't change anymore, things that you've lost. So by practicing mindfulness and grounding with all 5 of your senses, it helps bring you back to the present moment, and just gives you a break. It gives you like a 5 to 10 minute break of not worrying about school, not worrying about everything else, not feeling sad about things that you've missed out on, but what's happening right now. Take a walk. What am I seeing on my walk? Do some exercise and think about how that feels in your body and what you're seeing and smelling and hearing. So just kind of doing some kind of mindful activity can be really helpful. And as I said before, self-compassion. So just helping your students be a little compassionate. You know, they can't do everything perfectly all the time. It's impossible, especially right now during the pandemic. Tell my students to ask themselves what they would say to a friend in this situation, having similar thoughts. And that usually actually kind of helps them, because I'll say, well, you know, what would you tell your best friend if you were feeling, if they said they were feeling this way? And they always kind of laugh and say, well, obviously I would tell them to do this, this, or this. And I'm like, okay, so why can't you do that? So that kind of helps a little bit. But just being okay that right now you can't be 100% all the time. I have two different sayings depending on the type of student I'm working with. One of them is just 80% is perfect and 70% is okay. And a lot of students don't like that, because obviously they want to get like straight A's, and having 80% sounds like a B to them instead of like the amount of effort that they're putting in. But they've actually done studies that show that the first like 80% of effort you put into something is probably the best outcome you're going to get. And that last 20% really doesn't matter as much. You're just not getting as many results. So putting 80% of effort into your schoolwork can still produce an A, but it's not putting yourself so stressed out that you're blanking because you're overwhelmed and your mind's just like not working because you're so freaked out about this next exam. Or it helps you to not avoid the situation as much. Then you put off studying to the last minute. When you tell yourself that, like, okay, just let me put in 80% of effort right now for the next couple of days. And then if I have that 20% in me at the end of the week, sure, I'll give that extra 20% of effort, but that 80% is probably going to still get them the grades that they're looking for. My other saying, because they like the 100% more, is just that 100% looks different every day. So 100% of effort today might be, I went to the gym, I ate a great meal, I also studied for like 4 hours and I got all my homework done. That was a great day. The next day you might be exhausted, especially if you've just been stuck in your house for weeks at a time. Or if you're feeling overwhelmed, going back out into society again and being around people again, you might be exhausted. So maybe 100% that day is, I got one homework assignment done and I kind of looked at the next one. But nothing's really due right now. So I'm okay. I'm still ahead of things. It's just not, I didn't get everything done. But it's still, that's 100% of the effort you could give that day because you're exhausted. When students are sick, and I mean, I do this myself. When I'm sick, I feel guilty for not getting enough done in the day, even though I've got like a fever and I'm in bed and can't do anything. So I have to remind myself that 100% of effort that day is literally taking care of my body and making sure I'm not sick, so that the next day, maybe I can get up and do more. So students usually like that 100% looks different every day. So the next thing is letting go of those shoulds and ought to. So those expectations we set for ourselves. Give yourself permission to not respond to this crisis perfectly. Even experts haven't responded exactly the way that they needed to. It's still a learning process. I think even though we've been in this for a year now, we're still learning new stuff. So you can't respond perfectly. I think you can only respond the way that works for you. And you know, trying to have a healthy perspective on it from what you've been dealing with. Give yourself permission to feel those feelings, feel your grief, feel your anger, feel your sadness, and give yourself permission to not always be productive. Like I said, 100% looks different every day. So you're not going to be 100% productive every single day. And then another suggestion we've been giving students is to express your emotions through creativity. So drawing, painting, listening to music, even reading kind of works on that creative side of your brain. Keep in mind though, not to judge your creations as good or bad. So when I tell students to like journal or draw a picture or even buy a coloring book and just color for a little while, just to get give their brains a break from all their stress. Just don't judge it as being good or bad. You're not creating this to show it to someone. You're creating this for the experience of relaxing and having a break for a minute. So sometimes, you know, getting your students to take a minute and, you know, go watch a movie or maybe create like an art project or something, or even I think some people forget too, like even kind of decorating your room can be a creative thing to do. And then it just feels good because you've like cleaned your room, you've reorganized, you have a better, clearer space to work in for the future. But don't look at it as something you're producing for someone else. Looking at it as something that you're just doing to relax for a little while. The last thing I really wanted to go into just about like coping and everything is go a little bit more into the mindfulness. Um, so mindfulness is described as a moment to moment, moment by moment awareness of thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations um, in your surrounding environment. So it's characterized mainly by acceptance, attention to thoughts and feelings without judging whether they are right or wrong. So when you're practicing mindfulness, doing something with all of your five senses and just kind of trying to be in the moment, um, you're still going to have those anxious thoughts. You're still going to have those depressed thoughts. But just accepting that they're there and letting them pass and get back to the thing that you're doing. So some of the recommendations that we have for students is like having a calming scents in their room or in their apartment, having like air fresheners or a candle that they really love that just helps them feel calm, and lighting it and just taking a moment to breathe and smell that smell, because maybe it's calming, maybe it makes them think of their childhood, or maybe it makes them um, think of the beach or something like that. You can hold an object that is soothing. So having like a calming stone, like a worry stone, it's like a smooth stone that you just like hold in your hand. Or having like a stress ball, those kind of things can help you just take your focus off of what your emotions are feeling, and just focusing on how the stress ball feels in your hand and like the process of squeezing and releasing. Taking a walk in nature, and sometimes walking in the grass with no shoes, so you can like feel the grass under your feet, or just taking a walk, going hiking, something like that, and noticing the trees around you and the birds, and not bringing your not looking at your phone while you're doing it. Just be outside, be in nature. And then if you have any kind of faith or spirituality, things like that can also be mindfulness. So like prayer, meditation, those kinds of things can be really helpful for mindfulness as well. And they've done a ton of studies that practicing mindfulness can reduce depression and anxiety if you practice it every single day. Okay, so just some future considerations. Like I said, there haven't really been any like studies or anything on this. It's just kind of some things that we've talked about at the counseling center, just as a staff. We've kind of talked about like what are some things we think we might be seeing. We kind of have a feeling there's going to be a lot of social anxiety. A lot of students have been isolated. Like I said, maybe they had to live at home for the last year and they're getting their first apartment, moving into the dorms for the first time, or the residence halls. Being in person classes again, uh, being around a lot of people. I know I even had an experience the other day. I'm a very outgoing person. I love to socialize. I love meeting new people. I went to the grocery store the other day and it was busier than I've been used to for the past year. And even I got a little anxious. There was just so many people at the grocery store. I was like, this is a lot of people. So I think just being around people again is going to cause a lot of stress for some people. And then there's still going to be fears around getting sick or others becoming sick. There, some people are thinking that we're going to be wearing masks for a long time. Even not everybody, but a lot of people might just kind of have that germophobia now that they've developed, where they're going to be afraid to like breathe on somebody or have someone breathe on them. Going to the grocery store and picking out like produce, with your hand, with your bare hands. That's just something that you didn't really think about before, but now it's things we think about a lot more. It's just present. There's been so much focus on being too close to somebody or touching something and putting it back on the shelf, or coughing. You still hear a cough, even if it's just from allergies, and you're like, oh no, are they sick? So I think there's just going to be a lot still of fears around that. And then adjustment again. So there was a huge adjustment back in March of 2020, where everyone had to go home, like pack up everything, move home, don't leave your house. Just this huge life flipped upside down change. And now we're adjusting again to what is normal now. What does that look like? What are classes going to look like now that we're going to be back in person? Even with like the counseling center, we're having to adjust because we've been doing telehealth. So we've been seeing students virtually, but we're trying to now figure out a new way to see students in person, but also allow them to see us virtually if they need to. And that's a new thing. We have to adjust to that. So students are going to have to adjust all over again to seeing what happens next. And then, if this pandemic happens to have another wave or something, then we got to adjust all over again. So there's just been a lot of back and forth, a lot of uncertainty, and adjustment can always be really hard. You're going through a big life change, just going to college to begin with. but then also just dealing with the stress of the world around us and everything that's been going on. There's just so much extra to adjust to. And then feeling behind academically. So if your student was doing poorly before, like during this pandemic, because of the online classes, now they're going to feel behind. They're going to feel like they can't get their grades back up, and they're going to be really stressed about getting A's again, getting B's again. I've already noticed a lot of students who have said that for the past 2 semesters, they've done horribly, and they're looking forward to doing the in-person classes again. But they've already failed those classes, or they've already made bad grades. And so, now what do they do to bring their GPA up? And then along that lines too, like feeling behind academically, also just feeling behind socially. I've had some students who, maybe they were homeschooled for a really long time and they were supposed to go to college last year and be on campus. They had to stay another year living at home and didn't get to move on campus or move into an apartment, meet new students. And so they just feel like they missed out on socializing and getting to meet their peers. So just feeling like you've missed something for the past year. And now where do I start? How do I socialize in college? I wanted to open it up and see if you guys had any thoughts about like some things that you might think students would be worried about in the future, like going back in person or having to balance like an in-person class with an online class. Can't see if there's like any hands raised or anything. So.
Amy, there are a couple of questions in the chat, and I think you already addressed one of them actually just now about, is counseling in person or virtual? And it sounds like it's still virtual right now, but you guys are moving possibly toward some, variety.
Yeah, I lost the chat bar. I can't see it at all. Yeah,
I can read them out to you.
Yeah, I've still got a few more things that I was going to go over.
Yes,
but yeah, if there are any questions so far about things I've already been talking about, yeah, we're definitely, we're going to be meeting this summer to try to figure that out. We're still trying to figure out what we're doing. So right now we're still meeting everyone virtually. There are some students doing in-person counseling, but that is at the comfort level of the therapist and the student. So we're still trying to see if our offices are, if we have a big enough office to still kind of do the distance if we needed to. I'm personally getting like an air purifier for my office just to kind of help me feel a little safer. It's kind of, I gave all my colleagues that recommendation. I was like, maybe we should buy air purifiers. So right now it's kind of at the comfort level of the therapist, but over the summer, I think we're going to start bringing all the because some of us have been working 100% remotely, and some of us are doing like half weeks on campus and half weeks at home. And so we're kind of in the process of moving everyone back on campus and working in our offices every day. And then we're going to start talking about what fall is going to look like with seeing students in person again, and still offering the virtual services as well. Were there any more questions on the chat? I don't know why I can't see it.
Yeah, there was one more. It says, and you'll probably get to this, so I don't want to it's a more about CPS, like, is counseling included in student fees, and how must sign up for therapy? And I'm sure you're going to cover that in a few minutes.
Oh yeah, I have that at the end. So I guess let me just move through this then really quick. It's going to let me go to the next slide. There we go. So one thing that I think is really important for you guys to know is that starting in February of this year, KSU has expanded their mental health services and resources that are available to students. So we have launched, well, I guess let me say first, it's efforts that are part of a statewide initiative that's supported by the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund. So it's kind of in response to the pandemic. And this is to enhance the mental health and student support services within the university system of Georgia. So I think all universities have access to this, but just with KSU, we've been partnering with 2 organizations that are dedicated to health and well-being. And that is Christie Campus. It kind of expands our behavioral health resources and psychiatric resources. And JED Campus program, which is guiding KSU through a strategic planning process to build on existing student mental health, substance misuse, and then suicide prevention efforts. So we have this Wellbeing at KSU, which is a comprehensive mental health wellbeing initiative that includes services at no additional cost. So our counseling center our counseling services already are no additional cost. But we have these extended services now. So there is a 24/7, 365 days a year mental health support line for in the moment support, and helps link students to the next steps regardless of the time of day. So the 470-578-6600, that's actually our counseling center office, but we have it to where now you can like press 1 for the immediate services or press 2 to talk to a staff member. And so they can press 1 and they can immediately get sent to the Christie campus services and set up counseling or psychiatric services. They usually want us to refer the student. So we've had a lot of students come in for an initial appointment and then we connect them to Christie campus just because it's more convenient. They can sometimes see students a little bit earlier than we can. But they've added a wellness peer mentors to provide support and coordinate referrals. So if you need like off-campus counseling through your like insurance provider, they can help with that. And they can, like I said, they can provide that in the moment support as well. They've expanded access to psychiatric assessments through Christie Campus Health. So we only have 1 psychiatrist and 1 nurse practitioner. And so it's been really helpful to have Christie campus because they have a ton of nurse practitioners who prescribe mental health medication. So if we have a recommendation for a student to start medication, we can refer them to Christie campus and they do the virtual services and can see students within a week usually. Whereas we're like 3 weeks to a month out with our psychiatrists because they're so busy. There's an online wellness hub. I can't remember what it's called. It's called like ICBT or something. It's just educational content and self-help tools that we can connect students to now where they can kind of do their own cognitive behavioral therapy. So there are a lot of like, I think there's like worksheets and kind of like online assessments and things that they can do and gives them some self-help tools. And then we've also had expanded mental health training for faculty, staff, and students. So we actually have a service that we provide to the campus that's called question prevention response. And we have a lot more counselors are now able to get trained in that particular workshop so that we can present it to staff members, we can present it to classes. I know we do it with like residence life. We give them this big training on what did I say? It's QPR, question prevention response. It's just to help prevent like suicide. It's just so you know kind of what to look for in students and know the right questions to kind of ask and how to talk to them. So we actually have a lot more staff and mental health staff as well getting trained in that. And then with our existing resources, so we already have the student health services, which you guys probably already know about, the WellStar Student Health Center. They actually sometimes will provide psychiatric medication. They also now have a psychologist in their staff as well who can do some counseling. There's health promotion and wellness just to help with, we have a dietitian on campus that can help with eating concerns. And we have counseling and psychological services, which I'll tell you more about in a second. And we're actually partnering with sports and recreation as well to help students with if they're having like eating concerns and exercise, weight, that kind of stuff. So we have sports and rec helping with, they have like fitness trainers. And then the Center for Young Adult Addiction and Recovery. So if you have any concerns about your student as far as like substance use or anything, the Center for Young Adult Addiction and Recovery have a licensed counselor on staff. And then they also offer a lot of groups and some other things for that. And then I just want to let you guys know too that the KSU's Mental Health Initiatives Project Team is composed of representatives from departments and units throughout the university. And they met for several months to develop and implement these initiatives and are working on a long-term plan through the strategic planning process with the JED Foundation. So I think they're still working on some things, but there is a team that is working on this. So, I mean, so that was starting in February of this year. And so we're in April now. It's only been a couple of months and we're already using these tools in abundance, at least through our counseling center, I know. So for counseling and psychological services, we offer a variety of things. So counseling and the psychiatric services as well are no charge to students. We always say it's included in the fees, but I don't think there are actually any fees associated with counseling. So they don't have to pay for the counseling. They don't have to pay for psychiatric services. We have individual counseling. Students are allowed 16 sessions per academic year. These sessions typically last 45 to 50 minutes. And the student and the counselor will discuss therapeutic goals, the frequency of sessions, and like the likely length of treatment. So typically we have this first initial session with them, and we kind of get all their background information, and then we tell them, this is what we offer. Here's what I think would work for you. These are my suggestions. Now, what do you think? And then we kind of let them know that you get 16 sessions per academic year. So from fall to summer, you get 16 sessions, but usually if you space it out to like every other week, you don't really go over those sessions. And then if there is reason to meet with the student for longer, if they're like a higher risk student, or if they have a lot going on, or maybe we resolved one issue and they kind of started with a new issue, we can always talk with our supervisors and get it approved to have a few more sessions if we need it. And in the summertime, I think we're sometimes a little bit more lenient. We still try to hold to the 16 sessions, but if someone's graduating, we're like, see them for a couple more sessions or something. We do offer group counseling, and I think that some of our groups are fantastic. It is a great way for students to socialize, get to know other people who are going through the same thing. We have a meditation group. Hopefully, when we're back in person, we have this mindful drumming group that is just weird and awesome, where students just get to bang on drums for a little while and really just focus on how the music makes them feel. So it's kind of a cool group. Over the summer, we're doing a therapeutic yoga group. We have a creative expression group where they're going to be doing some art projects. We used to have this like improv group that kind of helped students deal with their emotions by doing like improv acting. So that was kind of fun. But then we also have things like anxiety, like an anxiety group. We have a social anxiety group to help students kind of meet other students who also have social anxiety and learn some skills of how to get past that social anxiety. We offer couples counseling, which I know in college, you probably don't want your students going to couples counseling with their boyfriend or girlfriend. But it's also helpful. We've had students come as like roommates. We've had like 2 roommates come and need counseling to work through their roommate situation. And then it also helps, like we have married couples that go to school as well. And so we offer the couples counseling for them. Um, and then we offer a lot of workshops that I mentioned earlier in the presentation. We have an anxiety and depression workshop that just helps the students learn a little bit more about anxiety and depression, and then learn some coping skills at the end. It's 1 hour. They sign up on Owl Life and they can kind of do it whenever it fits into their schedule, because we offer a bunch of them throughout the semester. We have something called PASS that is basically academic workshops on study skills, time management, test anxiety, and procrastination. And so those are 4 different workshops that students can sign up for that help them with any academic problems that they're having. And they always have room at the end to talk to a therapist about, any extra tips that they need, anything like that. I'm trying to think if there's one more that I'm missing. Oh, we have major decision. So this might be really great for some of y'all. We have major decision, which is they take an assessment and then they can speak with one of our counselors about the assessment that helps them decide a career path. So if they are just completely lost and don't know what they want to do with their lives, or they aren't enjoying their major, you can take this assessment and it helps point you in the right direction. It gives you an idea of what your strengths are, what your interests are, takes all of these things into consideration, including like your personality, your intelligence level, all of that, and helps you kind of gives you some suggestions of things that might work for you. So for some students, it just validates that, yes, I'm in the right major. This is exactly what I need to be doing. And for other students, it might say, well, that thing you've been thinking about that you're passionate about, but we're scared to do for a career, like this could actually be a career for you. So it's a really cool assessment that we have. And then lastly, we offer case management. They do a lot more of our more crisis management. So if we have a student who has to go to the hospital for like suicidal thoughts or a suicide attempt, they help navigate going to the hospital. And when they return, how do we communicate with professors? How do we get you back into your classes and help support you through the rest of the semesters to hopefully prevent you going back into the hospital, but also so that because you went to the hospital, it doesn't affect your academic standing. And it doesn't impact your classes as much. But they also do sort of some like academic coaching a little bit. That's more through like our student disability services, but case management can sometimes meet with students for that kind of thing as well. They also help with referrals. So when students graduate, or if they're moving to a new school, we can kind of help navigate getting a new counselor or something like that. These are our offices. We have 2 on the Kennesaw campus. There's one in Kennesaw Hall, room 2401. And then I'm actually located in the Kennesaw Place Clubhouse, which is right near all the residence halls. And so students, we had a ton of students when we first opened up. It's only been open since right before the pandemic started. So we actually had students who could just walk from their residence hall into our office and come meet with a counselor. There are 2 counselors in that office, and then we usually have an intern as well, who are like getting their degree in counseling. And so that's a really good resource, I think, if your student's going to live on campus. And then we have an office at the Marietta campus in the Student Center. Our office hours are Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. And then you can find us on social media and email at counseling@kennesaw.edu. I think that's it. These are all my resources. So if you want to look at them yourself and kind of get some extra tips, this bottom one, the dowconnect.org, is a really great website for just some grounding activities. But a lot of these is where I got a lot of my data for today. So that went really long, I think. How do I?
No, you're just fine, Amy. I'm going to facilitate the questions for you. We do have
Yeah.
a few. Just want to make sure we get everybody's questions addressed. So just to clarify, how does the student sign up for counseling?
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out how to unshare my screen. How do I unshare? Does anyone know?
Zoom, like you said, sometimes Zoom is so different. I'm not sure, but either way, we can see you. So
Okay.
I'm happy to punt these your way.
Yeah, sure. So how do they sign up? So you can go to that counseling@kennesaw.edu. You can email us that way. And that's pretty much how we've had most students sign up during the pandemic, has been through email. They just email counseling@kennesaw.edu, let us know they want counseling services. And we have initial consultation hours, which is that walk-in hour. Those are usually from 10 to 4, Monday through Thursday. We've added some on Friday just because of the pandemic and because things are virtual. I'm not sure if that will change, but so from 10 to 4, almost every day, students can, actually, they can just walk in. Usually that's what we used to have students do, is they would literally just walk in and say, I want counseling. Can I see somebody? And if they can't see somebody that day, because maybe we're really busy that day, we will let them know about the Marietta campus. And now that we have the clubhouse as well, students can come do consultations at the clubhouse. But we, during the pandemic, we've actually been scheduling those walk-ins. So it's not as much of a walk-in as like email us and we'll get you an appointment. But so that email, that all 3 of these phone numbers, so the 6600, wouldn't call the clubhouse right now. We don't have anyone to answer the phones. But mainly the 6600 number is the number to call, and you'll get one of our office staff to help your student schedule an appointment.
Super. There was a question about, is there a quick reference sheet maybe with all the details of the programs? And Julie, this was your question, so I want to make sure that I'm understanding it. I think you may have asked that during the question concerning the mental health new initiative. I could be.
And I will say it was very much in reference to what someone else said as well, is if there was something that we could have as parents, just in case our kids were having any struggles, that we could at least pass the information along to them.
Yeah, about the counseling services that we offer.
Correct.
Yeah. So let me pull up there's my email, but let me see if I can get out of my.
Yeah, I think just to sum up the questions, just while you're looking for that, Amy. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like parents are really just, this is great information. Kind of maybe what's the best place to start with helping them help their student find the information. One question is, how do they access workshops? Is that in Owl Life? And some students are not open to parent suggestions. How is all this information distributed to students? I guess directly, so there's some students who just aren't motivated or are unmotivated and need these services, and they might be, not likely to seek them out.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if y'all can you see my my website that I've pulled up, or do you just see the PowerPoint?
We're still seeing your PowerPoint. Yeah.
Okay, let me share this then. Now, can you see the website?
Yes, we can.
So if you go to counseling.kennesaw.edu, this is our website for counseling and psychological services. So you can click on the services, which is the first tab, and it tells you a little bit about our services. And then you can click on group counseling. You can see all the groups that we offer. I think this one's kind of old, so I think this was for the spring. But we have a ton of groups, and usually in the spring and the fall, we offer a bunch of groups. In the summer, we offer a little bit less. But that's kind of what our groups look like. Sassy is our social anxiety group, so that one's great. And we have a striving for motivation group that's new, just because we've seen that lack of motivation in students. And so we have a counselor who was willing to take that on and offer some support with students who weren't feeling motivated. There's individual counseling, tells you a little bit about that. The couples counseling tells you about psychiatric services, and then the case management and referrals. And this is a pretty good thing to click on as well, because this website, or this part of the website, can get you connected to, well, I thought it had it. So there's care services for students, which I guess if they're living at home, they're probably not going to need care services. That's usually for students who are homeless. And we have a student disability service. So this is the part that I think is most helpful. So if your student is struggling with anxiety or depression, they are eligible for student disability services. And they can help the students with the help of a counselor as well, to obtain some accommodations for school that can help a lot with extended deadlines, private space for testing. Maybe if they have to miss an exam because of anxiety or depression, they can make up that exam. If they need like closed captioning at the bottom of the screen, if they are, having hearing problems or something, there's a lot of things that student disability services can help with. And so I love our case management website because she just has a lot of information on there for off-campus referrals if there's hospitalization needed, financial hardship. There's a lot of things. Emergency withdrawal is something we usually see sometimes with students if they do get hospitalized or have some like severe mental health concerns and they need to withdraw from their classes and don't want to get all zeros, all Fs. We can help them with like an emergency withdrawal. We could do academic standing appeals. So if students aren't doing well, counselor can write a letter of support to help them appeal that semester, and they have a chance to, those grades can turn from an F to a WF, which I think doesn't affect their GPA as much. So that's just a helpful resource. We have a HEAL team. So that is any students you think are having eating concerns, like disordered eating. We connect them with all of the teams that we work with. So like the dietitian, psychiatry, sports and recreation, to kind of help the students live kind of a more like healthy eating lifestyle. We have a new ACT team, I think, that helps with more like behavioral concerns on campus. And we have a lot of neurodiverse students. And so that team is very helpful for that. They communicate, I think, with professors and some other campus partnerships. We're starting a peer support network. I'm glad I pulled this up because this is something you guys might want to know. So I think starting in the fall, if I'm correct, we are going to have peer support. And so if students don't want to come to counseling and they don't want to talk to a therapist, we're actually going to have students who are trained to talk to students about some mental health concerns. Obviously, they're not going to get a full therapy session out of it, but they might be able to help them get to counseling. So that, I don't know if it's been 100 yet. Okay. So we have a student advisory board that helps us with a lot of stuff. They give us a lot of ideas for outreach and things that we do. So yeah, I think they just sign on up here. They just fill out this form and hit submit, and a student will get in contact with them. So that way they don't have to talk with an adult if they don't want to. They can talk to another student. So that actually is starting in the fall. So we're excited about that.
So Amy, for all the workshops, so essentially is it best to go to the counseling website and click like you're doing right now, or are any of these listed in Owl Life?
They're in Owl Life, so you can just find them on Owl Life, and I think search for counseling and psychological services. But if you also go to our website, I don't know if you can see it. I think the camera might be blocking. There's workshops and programs.
Okay.
And you can go to major decision. You can go to the past workshops, which are academic skills, and then managing anxiety and depression. And then restorative yoga. I'm not sure how often that one's going to be, how often we're going to be doing that one next semester, but usually when we're in person, we have the yoga classes a lot. Art for Healing is a great workshop that we have. They do it maybe like once a month or once every couple of months. It's basically a place we provide all the canvases, we provide all the paint, and we have a therapist who helps guide students through just painting about things that are going on. So it's kind of cool. And then organization. So if your student is part of an organization, they can request a presentation from us. And so if you have a student who is more of like a go-getter and wants this kind of stuff, they can actually have us present. We present to like sororities and fraternities all the time. We have professors who request that we come and talk to them. So odds are your student is going to get some exposure to the counseling center, because we do a fantastic job of marketing. We have a student who helps us with like our Instagram and post stuff on Instagram. So it's like, I think it's at counseling. Wait, I had that pulled up on my PowerPoint, what that was. Yeah, at KSU Counseling. So if they follow us on Instagram or Facebook or any of that, we have a pretty good social media platform. And then we usually get a lot of requests for presentations throughout the year. Classes always want us to present for them. We'll have organizations request it and everything. So we do a lot of on-campus things. We also do a lot of outreach. So hopefully starting in the fall again, we'll be doing that again, where we just have tables set up around campus and we just like go and grab students. We're like, hey, you want to talk to me about this? Let's talk about anxiety today. Let's do an anxiety screening. And we're just kind of out there in your students' faces. We have to get over our social anxiety a little bit, but it's actually a lot of fun. We get some time out of our offices to be out there with the students and trying to get their attention.
I just want to echo that, Amy, and for you guys, for you parents that are on this call, CPS does an amazing job, when in the non-COVID times, just the availability of them tabling and your student just being able to sort of stumble upon, oh, what is this? We're making something. But of course, there's extra information at the table. There's a reason for the table, if you will. There's a very intentional reason why CPS is doing whatever workshop that they're doing. And they're just like Amy said, they're very present, they're available. And I will say too, additionally, we know that students don't always check email, but KSU does send a daily digest of things going on. And I get a copy of that too. And it's really helpful because students can easily peruse the top, whatever it is, 5 things of the day that are going on and say, oh, there's a workshop today. Let me check that out, see if I want to be a part of it. Or I should say for the week, not for the day. So they can see kind of all throughout the week what what opportunities there are. So that's really helpful. But yeah, I would say you as parents, we love that, we know that we try to nudge the nudgers, and that's kind of what we're doing tonight. We want to make sure that you all were completely aware of all the great resources that KSU has to offer, especially, highlighting the counseling center tonight, because just like Amy was going through the, anxiety and depression, it's just fluid, unfortunately, right now. There's just so much of it, and people are working their way through it in different ways. And so we're just making sure that you guys are aware of some of these resources so that you can, nudge them when you feel like it's appropriate. And of course, some students are definitely not open to parental suggestions. We totally understand that. So hopefully through a variety of different avenues, they'll be able to be reached. That's certainly the hope. I have a lot of parents that will email, my family at kennesaw.edu, oftentimes with a variety of like, this is what my student's going through. What do you suggest? And a lot of times I'll just say, hey, you know what, I think, if you will have your student email me, then I'll take it from here. I'll help them get connected. And I'll find another professional that's on campus that I think could, just be a good listening ear for them. And a lot of times that's me nudging them to counseling, because, I think a lot of the stigma has gone away, but there's still some of that around. But, we just try to say, hey, there's a lot going on, why don't you have somebody that is just a totally neutral person, you have a conversation with them about what's going on in your life, and help you sort of sort things out. So that's kind of how we start with a lot of this. But yeah, I'm kind of rambling on and I don't mean to, but
Well,
yeah.
I always let people know too that initial consultation, it's just a consultation. It's not a therapy appointment. We're getting a lot of information from them, but we only have to get what they're going to give us. It's really just a place. I try to tell students all the time, it's just a place where you're talking to someone who's unbiased. They don't know anything about your life. And we're not like trying to sway students one way or another. We're just trying to see like, what do you have going on and what can we do to help you with it? And a lot of us too, we just like to have conversations. We're not really trying to push anything on the students. We're just trying to talk to them and give them a place where they can talk openly about things to their comfort level. Like we don't push them to talk about things they're not ready to. But I do think hopefully in the fall, again, we can get started with doing a lot more of that outreach, because I think that was really helpful. We get a lot of referrals from like roommates and from friends. And so they'll say, oh, my friend was seeing this counselor and they wanted me to come see this counselor. Or I have students all the time will say, my friend needs to talk to you. I think I'm going to tell them they need to call the counseling center. So I think it's just good to let them know we have these workshops that you just go for an hour. That's all it is, that are really helpful, and they can kind of pique their interest a little bit. And then we have like the therapeutic yoga, and we have some of like the art for healing workshops and things that can draw students in on a different level. That's not just straight therapy. And then now we have the peer mentors, which I think is going to be great because, like you said, students aren't going to want to talk to a bunch of adults about it. So they can talk to a peer and talk to another student.
You guys are doing such a great job with such a variety of ways that we can make avenues to students. So thank you, Amy, for all you're doing. Thank you for taking the time tonight, and obviously in preparation of tonight, the time that you spent putting this presentation together for us. I know some exciting takeaways that I had are the 100% giving your 100% looks different every day. I'm going to take that with me for sure into my work week this week, because it really does. It's so true for all of us, our students and ourselves included. And I want to kind of echo the point about encouraging student involvement. So we talked about that, and there's actually some research out there that talks about even if your student is just involved in one thing outside the classroom, and our student organizations are, they're virtual, there is some in person right now, but if your student hasn't connected with a group on campus, we definitely encourage them to peruse OwlLife and figure out what kinds of groups might be available for them, because like I said, research shows that there's typically higher GPAs, and just overall general happiness that's associated typically when a student can kind of branch out from that classroom experience into just something that's purely social or philanthropic or whatever it may be, where they're making those connections there, and they're feeling like they have a support system outside the classroom as well. So yeah, and just like she said, students are coming to campus. It's great if your student is still 100% online right now. Encourage them. Say campus has been open for a while, so we encourage students to come. There's a lot of outdoor seating that we've done on campus to provide extra spaces for them to come and to be, so they can make those intentional spaces for themselves outside the home as well, and outside, or if they live on campus, outside their rooms. So that's awesome. Well, again, Amy, thank you so much for your time, and parents, thank you for your time as well. We appreciate you being here. We are going to try and have this recording available for you all on the OWL Family Hub, and in case you wanted to review it or share it with your student, actually you'll have that capability as well. So with that, unless we have any more questions, you guys have a great night.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.